There were still scars on her back due to the beating she received from Auntie Neka. Emeka, on the other hand, continued sleeping with Ijoma. He raped her every day now and any time he had the chance. Every day in the house, she prayed that help would come her way. At that point, Auntie Neka forced her to stop going to school. Welcome back to part 2. The next couple of months, since it was difficult for Auntie Neka to provide another virgin girl for Mazi Okeke, she decided to run to another state with her family. You struck a deal with the devil himself. You know how Mazi Okeke has been feared in this town. You still made a deal with him? And now you're telling me that he is coming after my daughter. What have you done? What have you done, woman? Amaka's husband asked Amaka. Babe, there's no time for this now. Let's just try to escape first. If we escape, then we'll have all the time in the world to talk about this, Auntie Neka said. The husband couldn't believe what was happening. He helped to pack up her things. After they finished packing their clothes in the bag about to escape, they were stopped by Mazi's guards. Trying to run from me? Mazi asked immediately he entered their living room, and they went back inside. Chief, can you give us some more time? I promise to pay, Amaka's husband said. I have given your wife more than enough time. At least I'm just a man. I tried. Didn't I try? Emeka? Mazi asked. You did, sir, she replied. What I hate in my life are deceitful people. You promised me a virgin, but you try to escape from me now? Mazi asked. It's not what you think, Amaka said. I have someone who will do just fine taking care of your baby. What's her name? Mazi asked. Not my baby, please, Amaka pleaded. What's her name? Mazi asked. Ifeoma, sir, she said. Uche, carry the baby, Mazi said. I will take care of the baby. You have nothing to worry about, Mazi said and stood up to take his leave. Please, Mazi, please, Chief. You know how far we have come, Amaka pleaded. And you of all people know how I don't like mixing business with pleasure, Mazi said. But Amaka held his shoes tight, still begging. Please, Mazi, please, don't take my daughter away from me. Please, Mazi, please. But Mazi Okeke paid deaf ears to all her pleas and went out. Amaka screamed on top of her voice. Her husband just went silent. Ifeoma, my baby, she cried for many hours. She refused to stand up from the ground where she sat. After hours of crying, she finally wiped her tears and promised herself to do whatever in her powers to catch Ijeoma and return her to Mazi Okeke in order to rescue her daughter Ifeoma. Ijeoma continued living in Auntie Neka's house for years. She was still maltreated. Neka's brother Okolo was still living with them. Ijeoma later discovered that the man in question wasn't Auntie Neka's brother. He was the father to her last child, God's gift. Ijeoma came back one afternoon and met Auntie Neka and Brother Okolo making out. Brother Okolo was the man Auntie Neka introduced to late Uncle Mike as her brother. When she saw what she saw, she didn't say a word. She couldn't dare. When she was sent to fetch water, she sometimes met with her school friend Chinedu. Chinedu asked her one day why she stopped coming to school. She told him that Uncle Mike was dead and he was the one paying for her fees. Chinedu promised to help her out one day. Emeka, on the other hand, continued forcing himself on Ijeoma. Ijeoma was 17 years old. She was washing the clothes of the whole family when she quickly ran beside the wall to vomit. When Auntie Neka saw her, she immediately knew she was pregnant. You spoiled child, you have finally succeeded at getting pregnant under my roof, Auntie Neka said to her. She beat Ijeoma for getting pregnant. Who is the father of that thing in your stomach? Auntie Neka finally asked. It's Emeka, Ijeoma said. Emeka, my son? Auntie Neka asked, acting all surprised. From accusing my son of raping you to this now? Ijeoma nodded yes. Auntie Neka called Emeka. Emeka, Ijeoma said you got her pregnant. Do you know anything about it? Neka asked her son. No, Mommy, this girl is accusing me wrongly. I don't even talk to her that much. Why will I impregnate her now? Emeka said. You have heard him. So why are you accusing my son wrongly? Auntie Emeka asked Ijeoma. Auntie, I'm telling the truth, Ijeoma said. Whatever that you may, you will not have this thing in your stomach in this house. That's if you still want to continue living with us. This evening, you follow me to where we'll remove that thing growing in your stomach, Auntie Neka said. Auntie, are you saying we'll abort my unborn child? Ijeoma asked. Are you deaf? You are aborting that thing this night, Auntie Neka said angrily. Auntie Neka told Ijeoma to follow her to the doctor that will carry out the abortion. Ijeoma quietly followed her to the doctor's house, in which the abortion was to be carried out. After minutes of the process, the doctor was finally done. Ijeoma laid in the chair with her eyes closed and tears already circulating all over her face. The doctor asked to meet with Auntie Neka outside. Did you hit her while she was pregnant? The doctor asked Auntie Neka. Hit her? As in how? Auntie Neka asked, confused. During the abortion process, I noticed a contraction due to a severe hit, the doctor said. So, what are you trying to say? Auntie Neka asked the doctor. I'm afraid, but she lost her womb. The young lady in there will not be able to bear a child again, the doctor told Auntie Neka. Ijeoma was close to the door eavesdropping when the conversation was going on. Immediately she heard that she would not be able to bear a child again. Tears came out of her eyes. She returned back to the chair she was sitting on before. The doctor and Auntie Neka came back in the room. Let's go, Auntie Neka told Ijeoma. Ijeoma followed helplessly. When you get home tonight, rest for a little while, Auntie Neka said. Auntie Neka noticed a constant stare from Ijeoma. Is there any problem? Auntie Neka asked. No, Auntie, Ijeoma replied. They continued walking home. Auntie Neka, did the doctor tell you anything that I should know? Ijeoma asked. Anything like what? Anything like what? Seems like you are now matured to be questioning me, Auntie Neka asked. Nothing. It's just that your face hasn't been good since we came out of the doctor's house, Ijeoma said. Auntie Neka was quiet. The rest of the journey back home was a quiet one. When they got home, Ijeoma went to her room to sleep. That same night became a very long night for Ijeoma. While everyone was fast asleep, she took some of her clothes and ran out of the house. She was really miserable in that house, especially after Uncle Mike died. She was maltreated without regard. It was better that she ran for her dear life before she got killed. She was already 17 and she knew what was good for her and what was not. Chinedu, her former schoolmate, told her to come and stay with him. Chinedu also suffered in the hands of his guardians, but now he lived alone and he was doing well for himself, even at his young age. Few months ago, when he last saw Ijeoma when she was going to the market to buy foodstuffs, he gave her a small button phone to call him whenever she needed his help. Ijeoma had been safeguarding this phone like her life depends on it. The night after the abortion was the night she made up her mind to call Chinedu. She ran for her life. She tried calling his number, which was the only number on the phone. But there was a network issue. She kept trying the number. She tried, and then the number finally went through. IJ, as Chinedu fondly called her. What's the problem? He asked over the phone. I need your help, Ijeoma said, panting. This night? He asked. Yes, Ijeoma replied. Isn't it too late? I escaped from my auntie's house. I don't have anywhere else to go, Ijeoma said. Where are you? Chinedu asked. She told him the address and he ordered an Uber to come and pick her up. Chinedu took Ijeoma to his rented apartment. Throughout their drive back to his apartment, Ijeoma didn't say a word. She just lay her head on Chinedu's shoulder. Chinedu saw how Ijeoma was. When they reached his house, he took her in. What happened? Chinedu asked curiously. Ijeoma was just quiet, not saying a word. I'm sorry, you need to rest. Just feel relaxed, feel at home, Chinedu said. You can sleep in the bedroom while I sleep in the living room, Chinedu said. He took her to the bedroom. Have a good night's sleep. But we'll talk about everything tomorrow, Chinedu said to her. Thank you, Ijeoma replied. As he stood up from the bed to go to the living room, Nedu, Ijeoma called. Chinedu turned to her. How did you get all of this? This house, the money you gave me the other day at the market. If I can remember, you said you are also an orphan and just slightly older than me. How did you do it? Ijeoma asked curiously. Chinedu smiled. IJ, you just got here. Why not leave these questions for another day? Just rest and sleep well for tonight, Chinedu said to her and went to the living room to sleep. Auntie Neka woke up very early the following morning, as usual, to go wake up Ijeoma to start the house chores routine. But to her surprise, when she went to Ijeoma's room, it was open wide. She wasn't inside. "Ijeoma, Ijeoma," she screamed. But there was no response. She went to the kitchen, the toilet, everywhere in the house, but Ijeoma was not found. She called her son Emeka. "Have you seen Ijeoma today?" she asked. "No, Mommy, I haven't seen her." "Please stop disturbing me. I'm still sleeping. It's too early to be shouting," Emeka said and went back to sleep. Auntie Neka searched all her belongings to be sure no one was gone. Where would this girl have gone to? She thought to herself. That morning, there was no one to do the house chores as her children have grown up lazy and the plates from last night were still in the dirty sink and their dirty clothes were still in the big basket. Ijeoma stayed in Chinedu's house for a very long time and he treated her like a princess. Ijeoma lacked nothing. Ijeoma lacked nothing with her time staying with Chinedu. But even at that, she became worried because unlike Uncle Mike, she doesn't see Chinedu going for work. But he was still able to feed her and himself, and most of the time, he came back very late at night. One night while she was cooking, Chinedu returned home back from a little stroll. Nedu, I have been meaning to ask you something." "What's that?" Chinedu asked her. "You remember what I asked you the first night I got here?" "What was that?" Chinedu asked. "How do you make your money?" "Like I said the other day, it's not that I have been ungrateful or anything. You are not that much older than me. So I figured out that I can do whatever it is that you are doing," Ijeoma said. Chinedu chuckled. "What if it's a man's job?" Chinedu asked. "Nedu, you are supposed to know me by now. I have seen hell, and besides that, what a man can do, a woman can do even better," Ijeoma replied. "What a man can do, a woman can do better?" Chinedu asked. "You don't have to worry yourself. What you need now is good food and shelter over your head, and that is what I'm giving you without complaining," Chinedu replied. "I want to work too," Ijeoma said. "IJ, this is a man's work. It's not a small job. You don't want to be involved," Chinedu said. "Is that why you dropped out of school?" Ijeoma asked. "I had no one to pay for my fees, so I had no option but to drop out," Chinedu said. "But you have made money now. You can as well go back," Ijeoma advised him. "My mind is not cut out for school anymore. I can't deal with school academics and exams. I'm fine where I am." "Meanwhile, since we are talking about school now, why don't you go back to school?" Chinedu told Ijeoma. "Why will I see the money to go back to school?" Ijeoma replied. "Come off it. I will pay the bills," he said. Ijeoma gave him that "really" eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "You don't have to," she told him. "I'm not complaining. When the next term begins, I will go and register you in school," he told her. "Chinedu, I can't pay you back at the moment," she said. "Who is telling you to pay back? I'm just helping a sister," Chinedu said. Auntie Amaka, on the other hand, was already having a misunderstanding with her husband because of the way their baby girl was taken away from them like collateral. "I told you not to do business with that man. We all know him in this town that he is the devil himself, but you still went ahead to do it anyways. It's been 4 years since our baby has been taken away from us, and you still haven't said anything," the husband yelled. "What do you want me to say, John? What do you want me to say? Are you not the man of this house? If you had provided enough for us, I wouldn't have run to Mazi or Keke for business." "Would I have?" Auntie Amaka responded. "So you now blame your expensive taste for money and material things on me? If you didn't want all these luxurious things, would we have been here?" "Don't let me get started," the husband said. "What will you do, John? What will you do?" Auntie Amaka yelled. "I don't have time for your nonsense," John said, and went to the bedroom to carry some of his clothes. He arranged his clothes and put them in his bag. "Are you leaving?" Auntie Amaka asked. "I will not sit here and watch you insult me," the husband said. "Baby, don't leave. Don't go. Please, I'm sorry. I will be miserable if you go," Amaka pleaded with her husband. "I need some time to clear my head," the husband said and left the house. Ijeoma and Chinedu were in the house watching TV one afternoon when they heard a knock on the door. Ijoma went to open the door and it was the police. "How can I help you?" she asked the police. "Is this the house of Chinedu Okonkwo?" the police asked her. "Yes, what's the problem?" she asked them with suspicion. "Ijoma, who is that?" Chinedu asked from the couch in the living room. "It's the police," Ijoma replied. Immediately he heard the police, he stood up to run, but the police forced their way in and caught up with him. "What's going on?" Ijoma asked Chinedu. "You're under arrest for the robbery of Chief Aaron and the rape of his daughter. Anything you say or do will be used against you in the court of law. Your friend Nonso has also been apprehended," the police said, and handcuffed Chinedu. Ijoma stood in the living room in shock as she watched the police take Chinedu away. Ijoma was surprised and stood in shock to hear that Chinedu was an armed robber and also a rapist. When she heard rapist, her mind went back to everything Emeka did to her while she was living in their house, how he molested her at a very young age. She followed the officers to the station just to know where they were taking Chinedu. Immediately she knew the place, she turned back home as she wasn't in the mood to talk about anything. Auntie Neka became the one to take care of the house chores and responsibilities. She cooked, cleaned, and did every other thing. It's been 2 years since Ijoma ran out of her house. Uche, her sugar boy who she brought home when she lost her husband, stole most of her money and ran away, leaving her with just little to feed her family. Emeka wasn't able to go back to school because of his friend's influence, just like his brother, but the last daughter was still going to school. The last daughter was already in secondary school. Emeka came back late from where he went to hang out with his friends. Most of the time, he brought his female friends home even when his mother was around. He didn't have any respect for her. His mother was already getting scared of him because he had turned into a hard drug addict, and the little money left for her mother, he stole it sometimes. Auntie Neka lived in regret for not training her children right. Auntie Neka still hadn't heard from her husband since the past 2 years he left the house. She was already feeling depressed, knowing how hard it was for her to give birth, and Mazi Okeke took her child away. One evening while she was at home crying her eyes out, she decided to stand up and go to get her daughter from Mazi Okeke, either by peace or war. She got to Mazi Okeke's gate and kept on knocking. "Mazi, I want my daughter." She kept on knocking and knocking until the gate man opened the gate, and Mazi Okeke from his upstairs asked her what the problem was. Auntie Amaka said she just wants her daughter and she's not living without her. Mazi Okeke smiled at her. "Do you now have my money, woman, and know that the worth of my money has increased by 20%? Mazi said to her. "I don't have your money and I'm not living without my daughter," Auntie Amaka said. Mazi Okeke told his boys to bundle her out of his house. She kept struggling with them. One of them gave her a dirty slap on her right cheek, which changed the cheek to red. The following day, Ijoma went to the station to hear what Chinedu wants to say about the whole situation. "Is it true?" she asked Chinedu immediately she saw him. "I robbed the man, yes, but I did it because of the country. Times are hard. I had to survive," Chinedu said. "What about his daughter?" Ijoma asked. "I didn't do it. My friend Nonso raped her. I told him not to, but he did it anyways. I'm sorry for making you doubt me," Chinedu said. "So what are you going to do now?" Ijoma asked. "I don't know. I will leave it to fate," Chinedu said. "I don't know if I'm ever going to come out of here, IJ. I might be in prison for the rest of my life. But whatever that may, go in my wardrobe. You will find something there. Use it and start a life. I love you," Chinedu said. Just then, the officer stopped them from talking any further. "Time's up," the officer said, and took Chinedu away. Ijoma's eyes filled with tears. The one person that had showed her love was now taken away from her. As she walked out of the police station, she only but wondered if she was cursed. Maybe there was something about her that she knows nothing about. Maybe that's why no one that truly showed her love lasted in her life. She walked home and went to the wardrobe as Chinedu told her. As she searched through the wardrobe, what she saw shocked her. She saw a bag filled with money, money that could set her up richly for the rest of her life. Her heart began to beat fast. What was she going to do? Because for sure she knew that this money was stolen. She touched the money and wondered in confusion if to take the money back to the police or to use the same money for herself. It's been 5 years since Ijeoma relocated to Enugu State. She tried all she could to save Emeka, but it didn't work. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for a series of charges. Life had been good to Ijeoma. She opened a thriving restaurant in Enugu, and the best for that matter. People questioned the source of her wealth. Some said she was too young to open such a big restaurant. Others said she was into hookups, but she paid deaf ears to all of them. She was 23, and each day of her life before she goes to bed, she checked out her skin in the mirror, and she remembered everything she passed through during the days that she stayed with Auntie Neka. The scars she got due to the beating from Auntie Neka were still very visible at her back. Auntie Neka kept living in regret for the rest of her life. Her children became wayward. There was a time she shouted at her first son, Emeka. Emeka got so angry and hit her. That day, she cried her eyes out. She regretted not training her children well. One day, while she was cleaning the toilet, Auntie Neka slipped and fell. There was no one at home to help her stand. For more than 4 hours, no one came to help her stand. In the evening when her daughter came back home, she went to the toilet to pee and she saw her mother lying hopelessly on the floor. She called the neighbors to help. The neighbors rushed Auntie Neka to the hospital. Auntie Amaka had already become a lost soul, just waiting for the day death would come knocking at her door. From the way she was, none of her old friends could still recognize her. Every day in her room, she cried day and night. News had it that her husband later got married to another woman, and that broke her up completely. He said he needed space, not to marry another woman, she said, crying in her bedroom. All she wanted to do was to end it all. Life had become full of misery for Auntie Amaka. Ijeoma decided on one special day to serve food by herself in the restaurant when her beauty caught the attention of this special customer who came to eat at the restaurant alone. "Hello, my name is Gozi," the customer told Ijeoma as she came to take his order. "Hi, I'm Ijeoma," Ijeoma replied. "IJ's restaurant," Gozi said. "Why are you taking orders by yourself?" he asked. "I just felt like it today. To get to know my customers," Ijeoma replied. "I see," Gozi said. "I don't know if I'm being too forward, but I would like to know you more," Gozi said and smiled. Ijeoma blushed. "I saw what you did there," she said. "Can I get your phone number so that I can take you out sometime?" Gozi asked. "Not too fast. There are some other customers waiting. Can I take your orders now?" "We will talk some other time," Ijeoma said. "No problem," Gozi said, and she took his orders. Ijeoma was busy the rest of the day. In the evening during her closing time, Gozi came back to her restaurant. "Are you stalking me?" Ijeoma said immediately she saw Gozi. "No, it's not like that. I just came to take you home." "Who told you I don't have a car?" Ijeoma asked him. "I know you don't. I haven't seen you with one before," Gozi said. "So you have been stalking me," Ijeoma said. "I couldn't resist you," he said. "I will call an Uber," Ijeoma said. "IJ, I don't bite. I just want to take you home," Gozi said. Immediately she heard IJ, she took a deep breath. The only person who ever called her that was Chinedu, who is now spending the rest of his life in prison. "Please," Gozi said. After much persuasion from Gozi, Ijeoma finally gave in, and Gozi drove her home in his Camry car. After that day, they went on several dates. In less than 3 months, they had already started officially dating. A year later, Gozi made the perfect proposal agreement and invited Ijeoma over. They were alone in the living room when Gozi went down on one knee and asked Ijeoma to marry him. "Ijeoma Ike, will you marry me?" Gozi asked her, feeling nervous and smiling. Ijeoma was super excited. That day was the happiest day of her life. She wanted to say yes, But immediately she remembered the flashback of how she lost her womb when Auntie Neka forced her to abort the pregnancy of her son Emeka. Tears dropped down Ijeoma's eyes in the presence of her engagement. "Baby, what is it?" Gozi asked, still on his knee. No, I can't marry you. I'm sorry," Ijeoma said. "Why? What did I do? Did I do something wrong?" Gozi asked. "No," Ijeoma screamed and ran out of the engagement room. Gozi was really heartbroken. Ijeoma ran out of the engagement room crying. She took a taxi and left for her home. Gozi was left with confusion in the engagement room. Did I do something wrong? Many thoughts ran through his mind. He immediately ran to catch up with Ijeoma, but before he could reach the road, Ijeoma had already entered the taxi and drove off. He stayed in the middle of the road with his right hand on his head and his left on his waist. And then his phone rang. It was his friend Nzube. "Bro, how did the engagement go?" Nzube asked with excitement over the phone. "Bro, she didn't accept the proposal," Gozi said. "Why? What did she say?" Zube asked. "Bro, she didn't say anything. She just ran off," Gozi said. "She just ran off? Did you try to stop her?" Zube asked. "She was too fast, bro. Before I could stop her, she had already entered the taxi," Gozi said. "Are you sure you didn't do anything to upset her?" Zube asked to be sure. "None I can think of, bro," Gozi said. "You know what? Just give her time to cool off. Tomorrow, go and ask her what the problem is," Zube advised. Gozi listened to Zube's advice and waited till the next day to meet Ijeoma. Ijeoma cried the whole night that day in her room, hoping Gozi would come for her, at the same time thinking of how hard it is to say and accept the truth. "Why me?" she asked herself, with tears all over her face, staining her makeup. The next day, Gozi went over to Ijeoma's house. He knocked, but Ijeoma paid deaf ears. She said she wasn't in the mood to talk, but Gozi persisted. After a couple of minutes, Ijeoma came over to the door. "I told you I need time to clear my head, Gozi," Ijeoma said as she opened the door for him. "Why are you pushing me away, Ije?" Gozi said. "I want us together. My life will not be complete without you," Gozi said. "I can't," Ijeoma said. "Why? I love you," Gozi said. "I have no womb," Ijeoma said forcefully. There was a bit of silence in the room as they both entered inside the living room. You have no womb?" Gozi asked to be sure. "I can't give you a child, Gozi." "Who would marry a wombless woman?" Ijeoma asked. "You never told me," Gozi said. I was scared you wouldn't accept me," Ijeoma said. Gozi was speechless for minutes. He lacked what to say. "Are you not saying anything, Gozi?" Ijeoma said. "I don't know what to say," Gozi said. He took a deep breath. "How did it happen?" he asked her. Ijeoma explained everything to him. How her madam's son molested her when she was still very young, and how she was forced to abort the baby, thereby losing her womb. Gozi felt really sorry for her, but he encouraged her to take a bath for that day. "I would just go and prepare for work now," Gozi said, and left the house that day. Ijeoma noticed how Gozi left. It was not like him. At that moment, she knew that Gozi would not proceed with the marriage arrangement. Nevertheless, she accepted her fate. Gozi went home that day and cried his eyes out. The only woman who truly loved him as much as he loved her was wombless. What was he going to do? He went to his mini bar and bought out a bottle of alcoholic wine and poured himself some. He sipped his wine slowly and remembered how his mother had always yearned for a grandchild, especially for the fact that he was the only son. He drank in his room until he became drunk. That day, he didn't go for work. The next couple of weeks, Gozi didn't go for work. Ijeoma kept on calling him, but he did not pick up. Ijeoma knew it was over. There was no need loving. She can't be able to bear children, and the one person that caused her to be wombless was still frolicking around. That moment, she made the vow to end Emeka, Neka's first son, the boy that raped her and caused her to be wombless. She thought of many ways to end him, and killing him with a gun was the best idea she got. Ijoma already made up her mind to end Emeka, even if that was the last thing that she does. She bought a gun from someone. That day after crying, she took a few drinks and took a taxi that would take her to Asaba where Emeka stayed. Gozi was still in his house. He was trying to figure out which decision to take. Why must life always be so complicated? He thought to himself. He was already high on alcohol when his friend Zube came into the house. "Guy, how far? Why haven't you been to work for the past few weeks?" Zube asked immediately he entered his apartment. He didn't realize Gozi was a bit drunk at the moment until he got closer to him. "Bro, have you been drinking?" Zube asked Gozi immediately he noticed. "Bro, I don't know what to do. I love this girl," Zube said. "Then what seems to be the problem?" Zube asked. "It's more complicated than you can imagine," Gozi said. "Try me," Zube told him. "She lost her womb when she was still very young," Gozi said. "How?" Zube asked. "Apparently, her madam's son raped her and got her pregnant. When she found out, she forced her to abort it. During the process of the abortion, she lost her womb," Gozi explained to Zube. "That's huge," Zube said. "I'm literally confused, bro," Gozi said. "Have you guys tried out a test in all of this? Just to be sure," Zube suggested. "I haven't tried it out. We haven't tried out a test. How can I be so dumb? You are such a genius, Zube. How did I get so lucky to have a friend like you?" Gozi said. "Where are my car keys?" he asked Zube. "Where are you going to?" Zube asked. "To Ijoma's house, of course," Gozi said. "Bro, you stink of alcohol. Go take your bath first," Zube said. Gozi smelled his shirt and perceived he truly stank of alcohol. He quickly went to the bathroom to take a quick shower. In less than 5 minutes, he was done and headed to his car. "Bro, I will see you later when all of this is sorted out," Gozi said and headed to Ijoma's house. On reaching Ijoma's apartment, he knocked and knocked, but there was no reply. He remembered he had the keys to her apartment, so he opened the door. There was no one inside. He checked around the house, but Ijoma wasn't around. He then saw a piece of paper placed on the table in the living room. He went close to the piece of paper. He took it up and read it. "Dear Gozi, if you ever come and find this later, know that I love you so much. I have accepted my fate, and I'm on my way to end this misery. But first, I must end the person that put me in this misery." The letter was written with so much pain. Gozi immediately dropped the letter and went outside hurriedly. He locked Ijoma's apartment and called his friend Zube to meet him at the next junction. He drove as fast as he could. Zube was already at the junction waiting for him. "Bro, what's the problem?" Zube asked. "We are going to Asaba to save my woman," Gozi said as he drove to Asaba. "I can't forgive myself if anything ever happened to Ijoma," Gozi said. "Take it easy," Zube kept on advising him as they drove to Asaba. It was a very long journey from Enugu to Asaba. Ijoma always told Gozi about what the house in Asaba looked like. She once told him the address when they were discussing and how good Uncle Mike was to her. And even the night Uncle Mike died, when he had a quarrel with his wife Neka. They finally reached Asaba after a few hours, and Zube helped by asking the passerby the address his friend had told him. After a series of asking, they finally got to the address of Auntie Neka's house. On reaching the address, they saw Ijoma coming out of the house crying. Immediately, Gozi stopped the car. He came out and rushed to Ijoma. "I couldn't do it," Ijoma said immediately she saw Gozi. "I am proud of you, Ijoma," Gozi said. "We shouldn't take revenge into our own hands," Gozi said and hugged Ijoma again. He took her back into the car and they drove off. Ijoma explained everything to Gozi as they drove to Asaba market, where Ijoma said she wanted Gozi to drive her to. "When I reached there, I found Emeka with a lady. They were having sex while his mother was around. He has been spoiled. I had the gun pointed at him. I could have pulled the trigger, but I couldn't do it. And Auntie Neka was looking malnourished. I couldn't do it, Ijoma said. You did the right thing, Ijoma, Zube said. Thank you, Zubi, Ijoma replied. They went and bought food items from the market. Rice, beans, yam, oil, salt, Maggi, spaghetti, and many more, and took it back to Auntie Neka. Auntie Neka was surprised to see Ijoma back with all of these food items. She thanked Ijoma and asked her for her forgiveness. Ijoma gave her some money to take care of herself. They drove back to the hotel and spent the night there. They booked 2 rooms. Zube and Gozi were to stay in one and Ijoma in the other. Gozi later went to Ijoma's room. He knocked and Ijoma let him in. He went and sat on the bed beside Ijoma. Why did you come? Ijoma asked Gozi. You knew I would come, Gozi said. I was hoping. I didn't know, Ijoma said. I was hoping we could go for a test, Gozi said. What changes? Nothing changes. I'm wombless, Ijoma said. We don't know for sure. You haven't conducted a test, Gozi said. So if we conduct this test and I still can't give birth, what next? Ijoma asked. Gozi held her hands and looked her into her eyes. What's next is that I will marry you, and when we want a child, we can adopt 1 or 2. We adopt as many as we can, Gozi said. Ijoma pulled out her hand. You can't be serious, Ijoma said. I have never been more serious in my life, IJ, Gozi said, and took back her hands. I can't do this life thing without you. Allow me to be the man for you. I am crazily in love with you, Gozi said, and looked deep into Ijoma's eyes as if he was looking for something in them. Then he gave her the most passionate kiss ever. Ijoma couldn't resist. They were already deep in the moment. Then they heard a knock on the door. They pulled out immediately. Let's go for the test tomorrow then, Ijoma said, and Gozi stood up from the bed. See you tomorrow then, Gozi said as they tried to hug each other, but they didn't. The next day, they drove back to Enugu. They were exhausted from the journey. They rested that day and went to the hospital a day later to carry out the test. After the test, the doctor told them to exercise patience. Hours later, he came out with the test results. Congratulations, Ijoma Ike. You are good. There's nothing wrong with your womb. You can deliver your own baby, the doctor said, smiling, as he handed out the test result to Ijoma. Gozi immediately hugged Ijoma and thanked the doctor. Their joy and excitement knew no bounds. Ijoma was excited when the doctor told them that she would carry her own child in her own womb. Gozi's excitement was beyond this world. As they drove back home, Gozi asked her what she would like to eat. Ijoma told him to calm down first, but he insisted on making her a special meal, her favorite, jollof rice and chicken. He drove to the market first of all and bought all the ingredients that he needed to celebrate this good news. From the market, he drove home. After he changed his clothes in the bedroom, he went to the kitchen to prepare a delicious meal for Ijoma. An hour later, he was done cooking and he came out and served the food in the dining. You mean business, oh, Ijoma said and blushed. Anything for my queen, Gozi said. This one that you are more excited than I am? I hope no problem, oh, Ijoma said. Come on now, don't I have the right to be happy again? Gozi asked. Okay, Ijoma said, as she prayed and was about to eat. Babe, when are we going to do our wedding? Gozi asked. Ijoma dropped the food she had already carried in the spoon back into the plate. Which wedding? She asked. Our wedding, Gozi said. When did I accept to marry you? Ijoma asked. Gozi brought out the ring again. Ijoma, will you do me the honor to be the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh, my lovely wedded wife, the mother of my unborn children? Gozi said with one knee on the ground. There was a bit of silence in the room. I will think about it, Ijoma said girlishly. Please, na, Gozi said. Okay, I will marry you, Gozi Kelechi, Ijoma said as she helped him to stand up and they both kissed. I am hungry. Let me eat now, Ijoma said after a few seconds of kissing. Guy, you can cook, Ijoma teased. I know, right? Gozi said. In few months' time, they planned their wedding and got married. There was no time to waste. Ijoma began having the perfect life she had wished for. Life became fair for Ijoma. Everything she ever dreamed of as a child, she started having them. A year after they got married, Ijoma got pregnant, and that became the perfect gift life had given her. The joy to carry her own child. When Gozi heard the news that his wife was pregnant, he became the happiest man alive. He didn't for once allow Ijoma to ever stress herself. Do you want to stress my baby? He always told Ijoma when he saw her overworking herself. Life was perfect. Life was good. One night, Ijoma and Gozi were having a late night talk. They were trying to come up with the most pleasant name for their baby. If it's a boy, we'll call him Ifyani, Gozi said, rubbing Ijoma's belly. If it's a girl, we'll call her Ifunanya, Ijoma said. All right then, Gozi accepted. He lifted up her hands towards him and kissed her. I love you, Gozi said. I love you more, Ijoma replied. 9 months later, Ijoma went into labor that night. That night became the most confused and happiest moment for Gozi, as it is his first time being a father. He drove gently, at the same time as fast as he could, to the hospital. When he got to the hospital, the nurses hurriedly came outside to take Ijoma to the labor room. Gozi was restless. He was walking up and down the hospital, praying his wife delivers safely. After hours of impatiently waiting, the doctors finally came out of the labor room smiling. Congratulations, Mr. Gozi Kelechi. It's a boy and a girl. You are now a father of twins. Gozi hugged the doctor in excitement. Thank you, doctor, he said. Can I now see my wife and babies? He asked. Wait for a few minutes for the nurses to finish up with her, the doctor said. Minutes later, Gozi went into the ward his wife and his babies were in. Baby, I'm so proud of you. You did it, Gozi said. I love you, Gozi said, and kissed her on the forehead. He went close to where the babies lay. Ifunanya and Ifyani, he called their names. He went back to his wife and continued to gist her. After a few minutes, Ijoma complained of not feeling too well. What is it, baby? Gozi asked. I don't know. I don't feel too well. Then she started breathing too fast. Doctor! Gozi screamed out. And the doctor came into the ward immediately, and the nurses followed him and led Gozi out. Gozi was restless. Minutes later, the doctor came out of the ward with a sad face. Doctor, no, Gozi said. She lost a lot of blood, the doctor said. We lost her. No, doctor, I want my wife, Gozi said, holding the doctor tightly. There is nothing I can do, the doctor said. Gozi sat on the floor and held the doctor's shoe. Doctor, I want my wife back, Gozi said. 10 minutes later, Gozi still didn't want to let go of the doctor. Doctor, one of the nurses rushed out. She just made a pulse, the nurse said. A pulse? The doctor asked to be sure. What is going on, doctor? Gozi asked, confused. Mr. Gozi, you will have to let me go and see what's going on, the doctor said, and went back into Ijoma's ward. 30 minutes later, Gozi was called back into the ward. Mr. Gozi, I have never seen something like this before. In all my 15 years of practicing as a doctor. I mean, your wife just came back to life. This is a miracle, the doctor said. Gozi used the back of his right hand and wiped his tears. The news of Ijoma coming back to life spread all over Enugu State. No one could even tell who started the news. The radio stations were already talking about it. Soon, the news reached the TV stations and it was heard all over Nigeria. Auntie Ebere watched the news from Lagos. Auntie Ebere was Ijoma's neighbor when she was very small. She was the one taking care of Ijoma when Ijoma's father was sick. And even until Ijoma's father's death, she took care of Ijoma until she relocated back to Lagos to start up a life and she eventually got married. She had been looking for Ijeoma for the past 14 years. She also called Auntie Amaka severally, but Amaka told her that Ijeoma stole from her and ran away. Auntie Ebere didn't believe the news. When the news of Ijeoma started flying all over TV and radio stations, she knew it was Ijeoma, and without hesitating, she flew down to Enugu State and went straight to the hospital to meet Ijeoma. Ijeoma was already regaining back her strength, and when she saw Auntie Ebere, she immediately recognized her. "Auntie Ebere," Ijeoma said and stood up right on the bed. "I have looked for you all these years. I called your auntie, your father's stepsister. She said things that I don't understand. I never thought I would see you again until I saw the news," Auntie Ebere said. Ijeoma explained everything to Auntie Ebere, how Auntie Amaka tried to marry her off to an old man at the age of 15 and she ran away. The next day, Ijeoma was discharged from the hospital and she went back home with her twins. Ijeoma was super excited. Auntie Ebere also followed her home. Auntie Ebere stayed with her in Enugu since Ijeoma had no one else to help her out. She took care of the twins. Ijeoma was already a mini celebrity. That day, Auntie Amaka was watching TV. When she saw Ijeoma's picture on TV, she felt embarrassed and ashamed of herself for what she had done to her brother's child. She was already in a depressed state, looking older than her age. She then decided to go to Ijeoma's house on the day of her child's dedication and ask for forgiveness. People were curious to know how she overcame death, but she had already given a testimony in church that God just wanted her to be alive and take care of her children. Her mother died during her birth. Her father died when she was 12. It was only right for her to stand strong for her babies. As she was receiving gifts from the guests, she was shocked who she saw. It was her stepfather's sister, Auntie Amaka. She was looking malnourished. Amaka immediately asked for a microphone from the MC. "Now I know why I'm still alive," she said as she used the mic. "I am alive today so that Ijeoma would forgive me for all the things I did to her." Everyone in the reception ground now concentrated on Auntie Amaka. "I plead for your forgiveness," Auntie Amaka said in the reception, and tears filled her eyes as she knelt down before Ijeoma. Ijeoma forgave Auntie Amaka. Auntie Amaka thanked her and told her all she went through when Ijeoma escaped, how her husband left her and how the old man, Mazi Okeke, she wanted to marry her off to, collected her daughter from her because she didn't pay her debt or provide another virgin for him to marry. That day was the happiest day for Ijeoma. Ifunanya and Ifeanyi grew strong and brilliant. "My blessings," as Ijeoma would fondly call them. "What would you want to be in future?" Ijeoma asked. Ijeoma asked Ifunanya when she turned 17. "Mommy, I want to be a writer," Ifunanya responded. "What about you, Ifeanyi?" Ijeoma asked. "I want to be a doctor," he replied. Ijeoma raised her children so well that they confided in her and they took her as their best friend. Gozi wouldn't ask for a more better family. Every day he thanked God for his family. When Ijeoma became 55, she called her daughter Ifunanya, who was now 21 years old, about to go to NYSC. They had this mother and daughter conversation. That was when Ijeoma decided to tell her daughter her life story as Ijeoma Ike. She told her daughter all she passed through in her life. To be where she was today. "Make a promise, Ada. Make me a promise that when I am no more, you will tell my story. You will tell them the story I told you today in order to motivate them not to give up. The road may be rough, but our destination is bright," Ijeoma said as she encouraged her. "My writer, I just want you to tell my story in a book when I am no more," Ijeoma said, smiling. Ifunanya made the promise to her mother to write her mother's story in a book when she was no more. Ijeoma Ike died at the age of 83 as a great-grandmother. Her daughter Ifunanya, whom she sees as her best friend, wrote and published her story. She named it My Journey. If you enjoyed this story, Please subscribe to the channel. Comment what you loved about this story and what you learned from it. Personally, I learned that we should treat people the same way we would want them to treat us. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe. This encourages me to create more stories just like this one. Love you, bye.